All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. So hello, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us for the Resiliency 101, Protecting Your Business from Disaster. My name is Bo Giles. I'm the membership manager for the South Tampa Chamber of Commerce. The South Tampa Chamber is thrilled to be the very first organization in our region to host this sort of resiliency program for businesses. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, the Tampa Hillsborough Expressway Authority. I would also like to take a moment to recognize our media sponsors for today's presentation, and those are the Tampa Bay Times and the Tampa Bay Business Journal. I also just want to quickly mention thanks to our community partners, the Regional Planning Council here in Tampa, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, the City of Tampa today, USF, Mckay College of Business, and the Tampa Field Office of the FBI. And last but definitely not least, we wanted to thank and welcome our other members today, the Plant City Chamber, Riverview Chamber, Tampa Bay LGBT Chamber, for joining us today. Before we introduce our speaker, we have a quick message from our lovely mayor. So if you would like to go ahead and start that video, that'd be great, Erica.
Hi, this is Mayor Jane Castor, and I want to thank the South Tampa Chamber of Commerce for putting this important event together. These past few months have reminded us how critical it is that our local businesses plan for the unexpected. This workshop is designed to help lift up and empower our local businesses by focusing on resilience and continuity. Resilience isn't just important during times of crisis. It's the key to success year-round. When we started to open Tampa back up, my first resilience program was to assist the service industry by safely reopening through our Lift Up Local program, which allowed restaurants to operate in city right-of-way. This helped increase outdoor capacity, creating more space for businesses to serve customers safely. We were the first city in the country to do this. I've also said that the resilience is the glue that holds everything together. It's one of the reasons I announced it as one of the core tenets of Transforming Tampa's Tomorrow vision. And just like it's important that we embedded the principles and practices of resilience in our business community, it's also important we do so in city operations. This summer, our new Sustainability and Resilience Officer, Whit Raymer, and our team began working with international resilience experts to develop a resilience roadmap for Tampa. The roadmap will help us better understand the shocks and stressors being talked about across Tampa. We know, for example, that 40% of businesses do not reopen following a disaster. On top of that, another 25% fail within 1 year. This is something we want to change as we focus on building strong, more resilient businesses that can stand the test of time and then become staples in our neighborhoods for generations to come. To accomplish this, we are thinking about resilience from all sides. We are already undertaking important steps by implementing a $3 billion water, wastewater, and stormwater repair program called PIPES. We are also thinking about transportation. Currently, we are kicking off a citywide mobility plan to better understand how we can help people move around Tampa safely over the next 50 years. We're also creating a parks master plan to ensure we are providing high-quality green space to the community. And moving forward, WIT will be working with the City of Tampa departments and community stakeholders to find opportunities to ensure our programs and policies are implemented through the lens of sustainability and resilience. These are just a few steps we're taking to transform Tampa's tomorrow, but there's so much more to look forward to on the horizon. I hope you enjoy this workshop and that you discover new ways to uplift your businesses and our community. We are Tampa Strong, and I know that together we can build an even more resilient city for generations to come.
All right, thank you, Mayor Castor, for that kind message. And so without further ado, on behalf of the South Tampa Chamber, we're excited to have Whit Raymer, Sustainability and Resilience Officer for the City of Tampa, here with us this morning. And again, just to remind you, if you have any questions during the presentation, please use the chat, and we will allow time for Q&A at the end. And so go ahead and take it away, Whit.
All right. Sorry, let's get all set up here. How's this look to everyone?
Looks great.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks to Bo and the entire South Tampa Chamber team for putting this workshop together. It's really important, and it's really, really nice to see our business community kind of coalesce around these concepts of sustainability and resilience. So without further ado, let's get going. So that was our wonderful esteemed mayor, and here's me on the right. I've been on the job for about 4.5 months. This position was announced. It's a new position. Even before Mayor Castor took office, this was a position that she ran on as part of her campaign platform, and kind of falls in line with what a lot of cities across not only the country but the entire world are doing, which is elevating sustainability and resilience to kind of an executive level position. So I was honored to be asked to come in, and I know there was a lot of excitement about this position, so I'm happy to be here. So transforming Tampa's tomorrow, T3. You know, during the first year of the administration, Mayor Castor convened 4 task force for the 5 areas of focus that she announced. So the first one was development services. This was led by Carol Post as part of the transition team. This focused on kind of permitting and business efficiency, and there's some great recommendations in there that we're working on now. The second one was housing affordability, and the mayor set out a goal to develop 10,000 new affordable housing units by the year 2027. So a really ambitious goal, and we're working with a lot of stakeholders to figure out ways to both maintain existing housing or transform existing housing and bring new housing online. The third one was workforce development, and this was making sure that our workforce has the skills that they need to match the employment opportunities that are here, and also attracting kind of new businesses and helping kind of provide that incentive for our diverse workforce to be able to meet the types of skill sets that are in demand today. The fourth one is transportation. The mayor likes to call this our Achilles heel. She has a funny joke that she says that mass transit in Tampa means 2 people in an SUV. I think that's pretty funny. You know, transportation is something we've really got to get under control, and hopefully with All for Transportation, if that sustains the Supreme Court appeal, then we'll be able to put some of those things in place. And so that's the 4 out of the 5 initiatives. I know it's called T3, but it's actually 5 initiatives. The 5th one is sustainability and resilience, and that's my shop, and it's really been remarkable to hear how much Mayor Castor believes that sustainability and resilience really does affect everything in these 4 plans, and really across city operations. Yeah, I thought I knew a lot about sustainability and resilience when I took this job. You know, I know about stormwater and sea level rise and climate change and green space, but you know, I'm being pulled into meetings on evictions and affordable housing and the new Riverwalk, and it's really been remarkable to see my colleagues here at the city embrace these concepts of sustainability and resilience in all the programs, all the policies, all the projects that we do. And I think it's been transformative for me as a resilience professional, and I hope is starting to help add value to some of the other departments. So, you know, I put this little thing together for a presentation I did for folks across the country a couple of weeks ago, and I know you guys all know where we live, but I'm actually going to play it again because I've got a little bit of narration that I put along with this. So just hang with me because, you know, I think sometimes, especially, and I'm a resident of South Tampa, you know, sometimes we get caught in our little bubble and we forget how big and how diverse the city actually is, and understanding some of our critical infrastructure that helps kind of keep the backbone of our city services alive and well is really important. So just hang with me as we go through Google Earth, and hopefully you won't get seasick here. I need to figure out a little bit of a smoother way to do this, but I love Google Earth. So I was doing this presentation for a nationwide utility group, water and wastewater utility group, and we were thinking about, this group is particularly focused on how sea level rise might affect their water and wastewater utilities. So already pretty clearly here in Tampa, we had people from the middle of the country. You could see how something like sea level rise would affect our freshwater supplies. And for those of you that don't know, the city of Tampa gets our fresh water from the Hillsborough River. Most of it, we do some groundwater pumping. So this is the reservoir at the top of the river, and here's our water treatment facility next to Rogers Golf Course. So we have a large groundwater permit that we pull water from all the way up to Pasco County. We replenish our reservoir. Then we also have to maintain minimum flows of the Hillsborough River for ecological purposes. And then down here next to the port is our wastewater treatment facility. And we discharge around 50 million gallons of highly treated wastewater into Tampa Bay every day. From a resilience perspective, that's a really precious resource. And frankly, the water that we discharge through the wastewater treatment facility is probably cleaner than a lot of the surface water around the state. And so we're looking at ways to reuse that precious resource as we continue to think about ways to drought-proof and become more resilient as population growth puts strains on our traditional infrastructure. So we're in South Tampa. This is kind of a typical day out on Bayshore. If I had more time today, I'd love to talk more about our mobility plan and some of the big ideas we have about Bayshore and some of the open streets concepts. But for today's presentation, we're talking about sustainability and resilience. And when I think about Bayshore, I think about opportunity and I think about risk. And so, when we think about risk, this isn't what Bayshore looks like, I guess, unless you're thinking about pedestrian and bike safety. But today, this is Hurricane Irma, right? This is when all the water was pulled out of the bay. And this was kind of a really eerie time for those that stuck around during Irma to see the bay empty. But also we know that Bayshore can look like this, right? So it's kind of a tale of two Bayshores. And this is the one that really freaks me out because this is where I start to think about storm surge and long-term risk and impacts of rising water. And you can hide from wind, but you can only run from water. And water is a scary, powerful force of nature. And I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about water and the risk of water today. So let's jump right in. Quick diversion here. So I want to talk quickly about some of our renewable energy plans. So the mayor on the campaign trail committed to transitioning to 100% renewable energy by 2045 for municipal operations. So what does that look like? Here's the fiscal 21 plan that was approved by City Council 2 weeks ago, and kind of buried down in there, you see that we're going to develop a climate action and equity plan. And most cities have a climate action and equity plan, and actually the City of Tampa had one back in 2011 that we'll talk about in a little bit. But this plan, I really want to highlight two words here: action and equity. A lot of cities have developed these kind of long, robust 200-page plans with hundreds of policies. I'm going to ask for some consultant help to come in and really not only look at the policies that we can develop, but also right next to that policy, do some engineering solutions. How are we as a city, where we've got several large commercial buildings and a fleet that has several hundred vehicles, how are we going to get to 100% renewable energy by 2045? That's actually a pretty short time frame. Right now, it's actually Climate Week in New York, which coincides with the UN General Assembly. This is not some nut job left-wing pledge. This week, Walmart pledged to go 100% renewable on a similar time frame. CVS, Berkshire Hathaway, the major banks, Google, in fact, just last week wiped out their entire carbon footprint from when they started as a company more than a decade ago. So, right-siding those historic inequities and looking forward to the future. Now, I'm also a realist and a pragmatist, and recognize that, we can't transition the entire grid to renewable energies quickly. We need base loads. We need to work with our partners at TECO who provide us a reliable, safe energy source. But I ultimately do believe that we can do a lot better in this field, and I'm really excited to work on renewable energy. It's something that I haven't had a lot of time working on in my professional career, but I'm learning a lot about it, and it's really pretty neat. So how does renewable energy kind of fit in with sustainability? Well, one thing that we're doing is currently undertaking a LEED for cities designation or certification. Now, many of you might be familiar with LEED certifications as it exists for buildings. In fact, many of you might work or own LEED certified buildings, and that's great. LEED has expanded this type of certification process to extend to cities and communities, and we received a grant from Bank of America late last year to undertake this process, which allows us a lot of technical expertise, because it's a bear. I mean, the data collection and the policies and the narratives that you've got to develop for this process are intense. I'll give you a little peek into it. And I should say that my intern, Michelle Mittenaire, is on the line as well. And thanks to Michelle for joining. Her entire internship is revolving around helping me get the documentation necessary to get this LEED for Cities certification by the end of the year. So here are a couple of the credits that we're looking at, and you could see how diverse these are. Things like looking at our green space and making sure that every resident in Tampa lives within a half a mile of green space. Looking at light pollution, that's our street lights. Resilience planning, so we'll actually get points for doing things like this. That's not why I'm here, but it's a really important thing to make sure we're doing that public education. Looking at transit-oriented development, no surprise here on the transportation and land use category, we're going to score pretty low, possible of 15 points. I think we will get probably the prerequisite of 6 points and not much beyond that. But moving on to the water efficiency category, I think we'll probably be able to capture all 11 points here. And that's because the City of Tampa, and through the partnerships with Tampa Bay Water and through our conservation efforts with Swift Mud, we have been, for the last 25 years, really, really innovative in our water and wastewater industry here. And I'm really, really proud of the work of our water and wastewater departments helping us get this credit. The next one down is energy and greenhouse gas emissions. I'm going to give you a little sneak peek on what our greenhouse gas emissions look like here in the city a little bit later, but we've got some work to do there as well. Again, kind of moving over to the top right, solid waste management. Many of you take your I hope most of you take your trash out. For me in South Tampa, it's Tuesday and Friday, and we throw our trash away, and we probably don't think much about it until we come back and the trash can's empty at the end of the day. I have to tell you, these essential workers on our solid waste department, they haven't stopped. They're there every day, no matter if we're working from home or if things are shut down. The process of getting your trash taken away from your curbside and out of sight, out of mind is fascinating. Here in the City of Tampa, we have the Mckay Bay Waste Energy Incinerator. So most of the trash that you throw away is burned down at Mckay Bay. And we create energy from that. There are pipes in the incinerators that are filled with water. Those pipes then are, that hot water is then funneled over to a turbine, which spins and creates electricity, which we sell to the Seminole Co-op Electric Company. And so that's enough power to power 15,000 houses a day, but it's also creates a massive carbon footprint and air pollution that we are 100% in compliance with air regulations, but it is one thing that generates air pollution here in the City of Tampa. Moving down to quality of life, there's just a lot of things that we look at here. It has to look at education. It has to look at equity. We look at civil and human rights. So anyway, this process for me has been really valuable to get to know city staff and to really get kind of a broad picture of what the city of Tampa, how it's performing. And hopefully we'll have that by the end of the year. So a couple of little things that we've been able to accomplish since I've come on board. 2 weeks ago, the City Council also passed a resolution restricting and to some extent prohibiting single-use plastics on city-owned property. So right now, I'm finalizing the executive order with the mayor, but when that's done, styrofoam, foamed polystyrene will not be allowed on city property. It won't be allowed to be distributed or sold at city events, through city contracts, or through city leases. So, I know several of our big events have already made this transition, GMF and other events. But, for instance, UT is a college that actually sits on City of Tampa land that we lease to them. So I've got to go work with Cisco and the folks over at UT to make sure that there's no styrofoam over there. We didn't tackle straws. I know there's a picture of straws here. Technically, the city has the authority to ban plastic straws, and I kind of want to back up and talk a little bit about preemption here. So Tallahassee has essentially it has preempted and really put a stronghold on city and municipalities' ability to regulate things in the recyclable category. This is a problem, and frankly, it's really stifling city innovation a lot. And I'm personally going to be working with our advocacy organizations and our stakeholders to try to get a little bit more breathing room to put in place some solid waste and recycling programs that cut down on our single-use plastics. Right now, we're preempted by state law from regulating bags. There was a law passed last session that would have preempted regulation of straws, but Governor DeSantis actually line item vetoed that, and that's why the city would technically have the authority to regulate straws. We decided not to regulate straws in this particular action, just given that restaurants right now are operating on such thin margins, and we just thought that was a little bit of a heavy-handed approach, and many of our restaurants have already made that transition, kind of using a market-based approach or using kind of signals from their customers saying, we don't want to see straws in here, or plastic straws, it's bad for the environment. Personally, I think straws are an unnecessary convenience, but I also think that our single-use plastics and our overconsumption need much larger, much more robust policy changes. And I'd be remiss if I didn't remind you, those of you that recycle, thank you. Our recycling program is still in effect, although recycling worldwide, and especially here in the United States, is really, really tough. China, through its blue sky policy, stopped accepting a lot of international recyclables. A lot of the loads are contaminated. I can tell you some really sad statistics here in the city of Tampa, because we haven't gotten really good at recycling here. And what I mean good is only putting the things that matter or that can be recycled in the bin and washing them. I would say probably 30% of the recyclable loads often get diverted back to the incinerator because they're so trashed. And often the biggest culprit of that is that people put recyclables in trash bags, and that shuts down the machines. And if they see a lot of trash bags in the recycling bin, they send it to the incinerator. So I can't emphasize this enough. If you think you're an environmentalist or a tree hugger, or even just are really good about recycling, please don't put plastic bags in the recycling can. All right, so let's talk about sea level rise and resiliency. So I mean, we're kind of used to these headlines, what does sea level rise look like in Tampa? Now, we fully accept the kind of parameters that NOAA has set out and the best climate scientists have set out in terms of the risk that sea level rise and storm surge poses to a coastal area, a low-lying coastal area. And we're doing our best through both our building development regulations and policies to help prevent and respond to these disasters as they come. So, and we're not the only ones doing it, right? So Realtor.com was the first major real estate internet company last week to introduce what's called a flood score. So here's a house I pulled down in Shell Point. And this is what you'd look like if you went on Realtor.com. If you kind of notice down here, there's a little new area. It's called the flood factor. It shows that this particular house is in a FEMA flood zone AE, and it's got a flood risk of 7 out of 10, which is pretty high, right? Right there. So what does that mean when you click that, when it pops up? It tells you that you're in a special flood hazard area, and it indicates a high risk. It means that you're going to have to purchase flood insurance, and that it's a pretty risky property to buy. Now, this is transparency, and I know that Realtor.com is one of the organizations looking at doing this, but I'm not sure if the Tampa Bay Realtors Association is a member. I'm sure they are of yours, but these are important conversations to have, and making sure that real estate professionals understand FEMA flood maps, understand flood risk, understand flood insurance is really, really important. And I don't know about the long-term longevity or sustainability of the National Flood Insurance Program. That is kind of federally backed insurance, but I can tell you that some of the best insurtech flood insurance companies that are coming online are based in this area. Neptune's one of them over in St. Pete. And this is private flood insurance, and their rates are not as cheap as FEMA's because they actually reflect risk, unlike FEMA's. Anyone can get the policy. It's highly subsidized, and ultimately that program is in major debt and will continue to probably be problematic and kind of a something that Congress looks at reforming. So again, you can look at any study out there. Tampa's on list for vulnerable cities to flooding today, vulnerable cities 20 years from now, 50 years from now. The data is all there. The data all supports it. This is CoreLogic, which is a research company that provides robust data sets to insurance companies. They purchase this data from CoreLogic. It's a massive company that many of you have probably never heard of, but this type of company underpins so much of everything that happens, whether it's bond ratings, whether it's credit scores, whether it's Fannie and Freddie mortgages. And so you see here, top 15 metros at risk of storm surge. Now, again, storm surge is what happens when you've got kind of high wind caused by a storm that pushes water onto the surrounding area. A little different than sea level rise, which is more of a long-term gradual increasing of water levels. But here it is. I mean, Tampa, third on the list. So kind of what is the city of Tampa doing to take all this data and synthesize it through a lens that matters? Well, I mentioned that we actually started looking back at climate action in 2011. There was a sustainability action plan that was developed and transferred to council. Didn't get a whole lot of traction, but it was really important because it provided us a baseline assessment and some kind of aspirational goals to look for. Then in 2017, in partnership with Hillsborough County, we did a sea level rise vulnerability assessment for the city of Tampa. We'll talk a little bit about that. That's part of a state law called the Perils of Flood Act, where the state is now requiring us to look at flood risk and vulnerabilities. USF also helped Hillsborough County create a community vulnerability handbook to give us some tools to help change our comprehensive plan policies. We're doing some more work on that. And then just this past summer, the city of Tampa received a report from Applied Scientists looking at our storm water outfall canals and how vulnerable they are to sea level rise, because outfall canals are those kind of big pipes that you see that take stormwater that are captured from the street and discharges it out onto bayshore. Or any number of water bodies. Well, as the sea levels rise, that water then backtracks up into the stormwater system and ultimately will come back in through those storm drains. So you see that in Miami through those things called king tides. That's how those streets are getting flooded. It's not necessarily toppling over the top of bayshore, but as the waters rise, the water goes back into the stormwater system and then pushes up into the entire stormwater network. And we've got over 560 vulnerable stormwater outfall canals here in the South Tampa Peninsula that will be affected by sea level rise. So a quick note on that greenhouse gas emissions report that we did in 2011, just to give you an idea, as I'm looking at transitioning our municipal operations to renewable, this is where the majority of our greenhouse gas came from back in 2011. Our wastewater department, that's down at the David Curran Wastewater Treatment Facility, and cleaning wastewater is an energy intensive process. We actually have some cogeneration down there. So as the wastewater, the microbes eat the wastewater and help clean it, that actually creates energy. We capture that energy and we have a turbine there. So we're actually creating energy through that process, but we still have a lot of electricity going into the pumps and the cleaning process. Also the waste to energy facility in Mckay Bay that I mentioned, all that burning of the city's trash, 90% of the city's trash, creates a lot of carbon emissions, and you kind of see the rest here. So I just wanted to mention that. I'll be curious to see when we do our update, we're going to be working with USF to do an update of both our city municipal operations and our community-wide carbon emissions, see how much these have changed since 2011. So just to talk a little bit about that sea level rise vulnerability study, it identified between kind of 1,200 and 1,400 properties that will be affected by sea level rise by 2040. 2040 is actually a pretty short horizon. Usually we're looking out to kind of 2080 or even 2100. 80% of those properties are publicly owned, so those are probably houses that line Bayshore and line the South Peninsula area. Tampa General Hospital, several roads, Mckay Bay, these are all at-risk areas. So, I talked about kind of these reports being synthesized into local data. You guys might be familiar, there are these international climate experts that put out data. Well, we actually have a local team through the Tampa Bay Climate Science Advisory Panel that takes all those massive amounts of NOAA data and they shine it through a lens here, a localized lens. So the Tampa Bay climate science panel, expects us to see between 2 and 8.5 feet of sea level rise by 2100. And, we adjust that with the St. Petersburg gauge. So this is what the St. Petersburg gauge looks like since 1947. See, it's only going up. And this is the NOAA high, intermediate, and intermediate low projections. So we are using the one in the middle. We've been advised not to use the low projections. We just think that right now, with the trajectory of climate change and carbon emissions, that we're not going to be able to maintain that low category. So we're looking at a minimum of 4 feet of sea level rise by 2100. So what does that look like? So this is what Tampa looks like today. You kind of see the river walk there on the left. This is the mean high water mark. This is at 1 foot. So you see our friends and stakeholders down at MacDill Air Force Base are very familiar with these risks. In fact, the Department of Defense, out of all the federal agencies, is probably the one that is most forward-thinking and progressive on the risk of climate change. They do analysis of all their assets and bases on a yearly basis, and this is some pretty significant sea level rise there on the south end of the peninsula. This is at 2 feet, and you see the Hillsborough River is starting to be affected here. Davis Island's getting a lot of water. Again, this is sea level rise. This isn't storm surge, so this is basically guaranteed water. With storm surge, you never know. It depends on the type of hurricane, how it comes in, how fast. But this is basically guaranteed water rise. That's 3 feet. This is 4 feet. So you see that really the west side of the peninsula and the southeast side of MacDill is really getting inundated. Hold on. This is 5 feet. So Davis and Harbor Island looking pretty rough here. And then I'm going to jump up to 8 feet, which is the highest mark there. So a little sobering. So how does this all matter to us today, right? So these are our FEMA flood maps. As I mentioned, FEMA is going to be releasing their new flood maps, which will take effect next year. This is going to change a lot of properties and their flood zone designations, and it's going to mean they're going to be paying more for insurance, and it's going to mean that as new development comes online down there and kind of the West Shore district, and new development happens and turns over new houses, you're going to have to start building higher, and that has profound changes on the character of neighborhoods, and we fully recognize that. The houses that you see in Tampa right now are likely not going to be the houses that you're going to be seeing built in 10 and 15 years. You're going to probably start seeing more houses on stilts and pilings along those kind of vulnerable areas. And it's not because, we're sitting here saying it's important whether you believe NOAA's climate projections or not. If you want flood insurance, if you want a mortgage, that's what's going to be required. Unless you're paying cash, then these are all going to be required things. And frankly, the city of Tampa is probably going to be updating its own building ordinances to require this anyway. And we're going to be needing to work closely with the builder community, the Tampa Bay Home Builders Association, and the real estate professionals. This is a big deal, and it's going to require kind of ripping the Band-Aid off and really starting to rethink how we build here in Tampa. So how are we doing that? We applied and received a grant from the Florida Resilient Coastlines program. Again, this is all part of state laws that are telling us to take a hard look at this. And basically, we're going to use a grant with the help of expertise up at USF to look at our comprehensive plan and to start recommending changes that incorporate these hazards. This is underway right now. So quickly, I just want to kind of touch back on stormwater. I talked a little bit about that report, 563 stormwater outfall canals. So this is kind of all of that stuff coming together right now as you might remember, we passed a stormwater fee. I think I've even got a slide on that here coming up. That is raising around $250 million to fix a lot of the flooding problems we have in South Tampa. As we build new outfall canals, we need to be paying attention to their height. This report also recommended doing a full seawall inventory and consider a seawall ordinance. A lot of our water frontage is private property on the west side of the Lower Peninsula. On the east side, it's Bayshore. So, a lot of kind of tricky questions here. How much of this needs to fall on private property owners? How much can we do on Bayshore? Here are some of the basins that they looked at, and these dots are just a small sample of where the outfall canals are. Here's a little bit about that stormwater fee. Everyone's paying that. I think commercial properties probably pay a little bit more. Taking stormwater off of the streets, putting it in a big pipe, and then transporting it out and discharging it into Bayshore, that's kind of always been the name of the game, right? Just out of sight, out of mind, get rid of the stormwater. Well, we know when that stormwater falls and hits the street, it picks up a lot of pollutants and ultimately also picks up nitrogen and phosphorus, all of the fertilizers and insecticides that are put down to keep our grass green here in Florida. So we know that long-term is probably not the most sustainable solution. So the city of Tampa is embracing what's called green infrastructure. And this is a stormwater management technique that utilizes nature-based solutions to help manage stormwater. So this is at the corner of El Prado and Manhattan, is that right? Next to Belmar Saloon, across from Belmar Saloon, I believe. And this is a Pervious stormwater garden. And this is going to help stormwater naturally seep back into the soil. And we're looking at doing a lot of projects like this. In fact, we just finished one in front of Mabry Elementary using Pervious concrete. And we're going to be putting an educational sign out in front of Mabry Elementary in a couple of days, informing the public that we're trying these new pilot programs, that we're really interested in green infrastructure, And, we want to spend taxpayer money wisely and also make sure that we're kind of really looking through the lens of sustainability and resilience on everything we do. So real quick, I want to touch on water and wastewater. You may or may not be familiar with the PIPES program. This is a massive undertaking, replacing over 500 miles of pipes over the next, I think it's 50 years or something like that, or 2040 right there. That increases the rates. I think the program is actually a 50-year program, but you're going to see increases on your bills. We have a lot of pipes here that are 100 years old. When the wastewater pipes collapse because they're not under pressure, it causes massive sinkholes or depressions in the road. It's just kind of this circular effect. So the pipes program, we got great bond ratings because of our finance and budget department, but this is something that is going to help us be prepared for future conditions and make sure that we're able to sustain the development and growth that we're seeing. Just kind of cool heat maps on water main breaks that we see in the city. And last night, actually, the mayor did a meet and greet, I think, for some of the neighborhood association presidents. And last night was District 4, which is South Tampa. And there was a lot of questions and a lot of slides that we put up about where the PIPES program and what neighborhoods they're going to be coming and when. And one thing I really want to emphasize is because we're doing water and wastewater, and because TECO is doing a lot of upgrades, we are really trying to abide by this dig once policy where we come in, we do it all at once, and then we do the road resurfacing, so we're not doing something and then tearing up the road. Listen, I know that your roads are torn up. I get it. They are in front of my house. My lawn is dead because of all the guys putting their tractors and stuff on that. It's frustrating, but I promise you that this is critical work. We're replacing pipes, again, like I said, 100 years old. We're trying to do it all at once. These things take time. But hopefully, if we come in and we do it right the first time, and then we can resurface the road, we'll be in good shape for a long, long time. And this is wastewater cave-ins. So finally, I just want to touch on a couple of points related to resilience and really what that means to the city. Before I even started, the City Council approved a new partnership with a group called the Resilient Cities Catalyst, which is a spinoff of the Rockefeller Foundation's 100 Resilient Cities Network, which was a really powerful catalyst and really pioneered this concept of urban resilience. Throughout the world. They put in place 100 chief resiliency officers around the world. Miami had one, I think Jacksonville had one, New Orleans had one, Atlanta had one. The mayor put me in place. I wasn't through the Rockefeller Foundation, but this is a spinoff group. They've done this across the world, and they're helping us develop a resilience roadmap that really looks at all those long-term stressors and those short-term acute shocks that people are talking about at the dinner table, or they're talking about with their family members, or with their neighborhood leaders, with their faith leaders. And it could be any number of things. It could be transportation. It could be food insecurity. It could be climate change and water security. These are all things that we're taking a look at and really taking that comprehensive, broad look at everything that our citizens are worried about and are thinking about, and we're going to put this together and develop initiatives around it. And to do that, we wanted to hear from what people are talking about at the dining room table. And so 3 weeks ago, we launched our community input tool called Resilient Tampa, and we got a huge turnout, no surprise, from South Tampa. And I was actually really surprised at some of the preliminary results that we've seen. And I'll save those for when we release this in a couple of weeks. But, after I saw kind of where the results were coming in from heavily, we actually refocused some of our efforts to try to make sure that East and West and North Tampa also were heard. And we actually retooled the survey and released it in Spanish. I did some interviews with Spanish TV, and we're really excited to understand, kind of what every Tampa voice is saying and what every Tampa voice is concerned about. And if you haven't had a chance to take the survey, I believe it's still live. I think we technically said we were going to close it a couple days ago, but we want to get as many responses as possible. So I encourage you to take it and voice your concerns, and also where you think we're doing well. So I know I covered a lot of information. I didn't even touch on things like transportation and resilience there. But why don't I just take actually one moment while I brought it up. And I'm sure most of you saw that we got a $24 million grant last week, build grant to complete the west side of the Riverwalk. That's going to be such an important part of our transportation and grid network, connecting West Tampa to downtown. Part of that Riverwalk will be exploring new concepts of things like living shorelines, which is incorporating nature-based solutions rather than using kind of hard seawalls. So some really exciting stuff going on. That started under the Buckhorn administration. And frankly, the Riverwalk has been something that every mayor for the last 20 years has wanted to get done. You know, that $24 million investment is expected to create $3 billion worth of investment in the West Tampa area. So, you know, we've got that going. If we can get off for transportation, you know, we've got a lot of plans here in the Sustainability and Resilience Office. And frankly, I think that our best and brightest days are ahead of us with Water Street coming online and our big ideas around Bayshore. It's a really exciting time to live in Tampa, certainly an exciting time to work for the city of Tampa. And I'm thankful that you guys joined to learn a little bit about that with me today. So, Bo, that's kind of the end of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions if that makes sense.
No, Whit, thank you seriously so much. I mean, all of that information was very, very, very valuable. I guess you did such a good job that none of our attendees have any questions, but I do have a question for you, if you wouldn't mind. You know, what is, in your opinion, the easiest way that our members or citizens, obviously, of South Tampa can contribute to some of these resilience efforts? So what can they do? Again, that's just kind of an easy thing that they can do to kind of help accomplish this.
Yeah, so as part of that climate action and equity plan, as I mentioned, the mayor had those 4 advisory committees for the 4 other areas. We haven't formally kind of coalesced an advisory committee on sustainability and resilience, but we are going to be doing so for the climate action and equity plan. And as part of that, I'm going to be putting together a climate advisory panel that I really want to represent broad stakeholders, so industry, business. So that would be one immediate thing. If people want to volunteer to be considered for a position on that advisory board, I'm certainly looking for all the help that we can get on that. So that's kind of one thing to help the city, certainly taking that survey. And I got to be honest, just showing up when we do these neighborhood charrettes and these visioning exercises. I know right now we're doing a visioning exercise on Beta Bay. We're talking about Bayshore. Talk to your city councilman. Talk to Bill Carlson. Talk to the mayor. She's accessible. You know, I know South of Gandy development is a big issue for a lot of the residents. We're going to be taking a hard look at that. But get involved. You know, email me. Feel free. We want the city to be an accessible place that is responsive and adaptive. We want it to be innovative. I know those are cliche words, but it is true. I mean, the first thing I do every morning is I come in and I answer constituent emails, and I try to sit down and really spend time thinking about that. And I'd say that those things are the best first things. And I would also say, you know, in terms of being an actual resilient business, you know, I think that purchasing flood insurance, even if you're in Zone X, is really, really, really important. 60% of the properties that flooded in Houston during Hurricane Harvey were not in a floodplain, so don't trust those maps, even though I showed them to you. Understanding your risk, mitigating your risk, having evacuation plans, having emergency savings accounts, those things are all critically important.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, so just kind of on that topic, but it's a great segue. Please do join us for the rest of the week, everybody here. Tomorrow, for some of our business folks on the call, you're going to get some really wonderful tools provided for you by the USF Muma College of Business. There's going to be 5 panelists talking about things like sales, marketing, staffing, that sort of thing. And then Friday, that's something that we don't think about, but we're going to have the FBI share some of the ways in which you can protect your, you know, the cloud space, or, you know, protect yourself from cybersecurity attacks. So again, thanks everybody so much. And, you know, I hope you enjoy your day. And again, thanks again, Whit. This was great information. So hope everyone has a good day, and we'll see you the rest of the week. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Bo.